why Japan recently?
And there seems to be a lot of people who always wanted to know more about Japan. Japan has gotten a lot more open and welcoming to and letting people do more, especially for startup. And it's actually quite easy to start a company here, to start a business. Yeah, to start a business.
What?
Yeah, to start a business. This market, the Japanese market, especially in consumer goods, is perhaps the most competitive in the world. B2C. Well, B2C channel-wise, but consumer goods. Yeah, and super crowded with products. And still, almost every month, every week.
Hi, Timothy.
Hi, Kaori. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for attending our podcast today. How are you?
Really good, thanks. In spite of the weather, but hot summer has gone by and we're finally going into cool fall. So yes, I'm feeling good.
Yes. So it's September, almost end of September. Yeah, but nowadays summer is so long. Okay, so Timothy, there are many of our audience too looking forward to listening your story. So could you please tell us about yourself? What do you do in Tokyo?
Okay. I've been in Tokyo for about 25 years in a number of industries. And in 2020, I decided to go independent for the third time. And I founded Synnovate. And I put all of my skill sets into a few types of practice areas. And one of the big ones and things I've been doing is market entry. So Synnovate helps companies evaluate and then enter and then grow in the Japanese market. And so all of the things that you need to set up to do that, etc. And then the other part, the best way for foreign companies to succeed is omni-channel online. And so setting up an omni-channel ecosystem is something that I do as well. And the third part, called strategic leadership, is when I introduce someone who can step in for your startup or for your business coming into Japan for your first launch leader, for example. And so 3 practice areas that Synnovate focuses on. And more recently, I'm focusing those practice areas on startups as well. And so the startup ecosystem in Japan it's still growing, but it's getting better and better, as you know. As part of that, I've been selected as a mentor for Founders Institute, as well as Techstars Tokyo.
Yeah. From this year?
From this year, yes.
Wow.
Well, Techstars Tokyo just launched. So for the first cohort, I was a mentor, yes.
I have a question. So here is a Google for startups, and then there are many foreign startups, and then founders, they come to Japan. So we have question, why Japan recently?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the pandemic going away is a big part of it, of course. And there seems to be a lot of people who always wanted to know more about Japan. And Japan has gotten a lot more open and welcoming to and letting people do more, especially for startups. Yes, and it's actually quite easy to start a company here, to start a business. Yeah, to start a business.
What?
Yeah, to start a business. It's not easy to open a bank account. Yeah, it's not easy to start it. There are some things that take some hurdles. But starting a business is not that hard if you know what to do. And so a lot of people are coming to Japan. And, this market, the Japanese market, especially in consumer goods, is perhaps the most competitive in the world. B2C. Well, B2C channel-wise, but consumer goods. Yeah. And super crowded with products. And still, almost every month, every week, I hear about another brand that wants to come into the Japanese market. I started working on this, and coming into the Japanese market, I came up with sort of 3 things that you have to have. I call the trio. Number 1 is patience.
Patience.
Yes, because things take more time in Japan, 3 times as long. So patience, resources, because it's going to take longer. And you don't enter for free. And the third is insight, into the Japanese market. And these are sort of the 3 pillars of what I provide at Synnovate as well. So one of the great things about the Japanese market, you're Japanese, and so maybe for you it's just second nature. But if you think about it, in Japan, things don't break. Everything works. The trains run on time. If you get a key, it works at the same time. For example, the rule of law in Japan is very straightforward, and it works very well. And governance is getting much better in Japan now, corporate governance. And so it's easier to start up, and companies are getting more transparent about their corporate governance as well. And so it makes for a great ecosystem to get started if you have patience, resources, and insight. That's sort of where the idea of my Synnovate name and logo comes from.
I see. So I like your Synnovate logo. Is this looks like a flower, rose, isn't it?
Yes, it's a rose. That's right, it's a rose. So I grow roses at home, and I often tell people the Japanese market is like a rose. So when you look at it from the outside, it looks very attractive, right? It seems a great market, great beautiful flower. And if you go too quickly to try to grab that beautiful flower or that great market, your hands are going to get hit by the thorns on the rose, and you're going to get injured. And if you go too quickly without knowing the market, you're also going to have trouble in the market. And so the rose means if you do your homework and you learn, roses are easy to grow. And if you do your homework for the Japanese market, the market is easy to enter and succeed in. And you just need the insight into how to do it. And also, some people don't realize roses are very hardy. So every year, if you do your cutting right, they'll come back and bloom again. And the Japanese market is the same. If you do your work, do your homework, get your Japanese consumers, as long as you take care of your consumers, they'll come back. They're the most loyal in the world. So that's where the rose and Synnovate being, of course, synthesize and innovate. So that's where the idea of Synnovate comes from. And that's where those three pillars come from as well, when we look at the market. What I do, it's really all about evaluating the market correctly, doing your homework, and that means working with getting the insight, doing the research on the market, and then planning your entry into the market. Foreign brands and companies, when they come in, they're like a startup, really. Nobody knows who they are, etc. And so what I try to counsel everyone to do when you start up is find a way to get visible, right? So you need to get visible, and the fast way to do that is not to think about getting your product in a drugstore, because if you go to any drugstore, you'll see they have 3 times the number of products, SKUs, of any other country. And so if your product gets on the shelf, you might sell 3 in a week, maybe. You just don't have the visibility, and your product gets lost. So what I explain is the best way for new companies, new brands, is to establish an online presence early. So use social media, right? Social media in Japan is huge. And again, social media in Japan it's a whole separate podcast. But it's enough to know that nobody uses WhatsApp here. You have to use Line, for example. The second largest media used in Japan is actually YouTube. Thank you, Google for Startups. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
The most users, and everybody knows the most common language on Twitter is Japanese. So it's a whole nother world. But if you can set up using social media and the upper medias, e-commerce and e-commerce platforms like Amazon, Rakuten, you can get visibility quicker. Now, of course, that's the resources part. You need patience because it'll take a little time, and then you need to put the resources on the advertising. As we often say, people will be shocked, but you need to be prepared to spend 30 to 35 or 40% of revenue on advertising on these e-commerce platforms, because it's expensive. It's expensive everywhere, and it's expensive here. But it's the best way for foreign brands to get visibility. And it's the same with people with us, with Synnovate, with Kaori, right? Getting visibility is the way to get the message out. And so I often recommend that. And that allows you to then pitch yourself to brick and mortar retailers or innovative retailers. Or perhaps they'll come and see you. That's the setting up the omni-channel. If a brand needs help doing that and needs presence on the ground, because you do need to have a presence, well, Synnovate is here to help with that too. Doing business in Japan is different. Certainly not online only. So you have to have a physical meeting with somebody for sure.
In person.
In person.
It's so important.
Yeah, face to face.
Okay.
The first meeting is to just learn about each other. If you have the patience again, to have multiple meetings, what you're doing is you're creating a trust relationship. And Japanese business is built on trust relationships. Whereas some countries, business is built on introductions or family connections. In Japan, it's all about personal trust relationships. Even if you're talking to a huge corporation, you're talking to a person. And if that buyer doesn't trust you, you're not going to be able to do business with that company. So it's really about personal trust. And sometimes that takes meeting after meeting after meeting. And therefore, you need to have a presence here to be able to do that. Or you can fly in and out, but that gets expensive. Talking to people face to face, spending the time. And when they know that you're committed to the market after this, then they'll be happy to do business with you. And once you start a business relationship in Japan, Japanese people are very loyal. And they will maintain the relationship with you as long as you keep it up on your side. So again, it's patience, insight, and resources, isn't it? The three key elements.
I see. Okay, so next topic, let's talk about tech starts, which you are mentoring.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm a mentor for both Founder Institute and Techstars. And actually, Founder Institute kindly asked me to do the keynote at the graduation the other day, which hopefully they will share at some point in a post. And I'm also a mentor with Techstars Tokyo for the very first cohort this summer, and they've just gotten started as well. So I'm honored to be mentors to these two groups. And I feel like I'm using my previous omni-channel, market entry, all of those skill sets, including strategic leadership, to help startups, not just companies coming in, to do this as well. Because a startup, it's just like a brand coming into the market. You're brand new, nobody knows you. And so, because I've been involved in many different stages of many different companies over the years, I have a good idea of how companies can grow, especially foreign brands or startups can grow in Japan. And part of that is a third area, practice area of mine, I call strategic leadership. And I've done discussions and podcasts about this. So instead of talking about emotional intelligence in leaders, which you must have, absolutely, I looked at leadership differently. And I looked at it as the skill sets you need at different stages of growth in a company. And the first one is called launch leadership. So even if you're a brand coming in or a startup getting going, as a leader, you need to have launch leadership skills, which means all hands on deck. You get involved in everything, you touch everything, and it's very, very much about getting the business up and running. After a while, the business is ready and it starts growing a little bit, and business is ready you want to scale. And so the next is growth leadership. And growth leadership is about the skills to prepare the company in order to scale. So it's sort of like organizing, putting systems in place, getting ready so that the company can scale, and then taking it to scale as well. When you're in the launch leadership sort of mode, You're kind of running around a lot and don't have a lot of resources, not a lot of time. But after a certain point, when you do have the resources, you can think about growth, and then you enter into growth mode. At some point, after scaling, you may find, pretty much every company finds, that they plateau. So growth kind of stagnates a little bit, or the business needs to change. And either the existing leaders or perhaps an external leader needs to come in, look at the business, and help them understand, or help the business understand, how do we need to pivot here? Do we need to change the business model? Do we need to try a different industry? Do we need to completely change our model, our subscription model to something else? And that's a transformational leadership, is the third type. The fourth type is, and we wish that it wouldn't happen, but most companies run into a crisis at some point. You have 15 employees, 5 quit on the same day, or maybe something happens in the industry. But in those times of crisis, you need an authoritative leader. And although the word authoritative sounds kind of like a dictator, it's actually authoritative is someone who can step in and will get people's respect immediately and settle things down, get everybody back on track to where you were before. And it's an important skill that some people have. In a previous startup, I was there to turn the company around until a crisis hit, and I found that I had authoritative leadership skills. And then the fifth type is what I call advocate leadership. Not evangelist. We don't like that word. Advocate leadership is the skills that you need to sort of advocate for your company, for your industry, to talk about doing things. So you could be an advocate for AI, for startups, or for your industry in general. For example, Cody, you're a kind of an advocate leadership for startups, aren't you? And that's what Creative Podcast is all about, right? So those 5 types of leadership are what I call strategic leadership. And this is completely coincidental, but from 2016, I've been in charge of a single course at Globus Graduate School of Management called Venture Management. And it's changed a bit over time, but it parallels almost strategic leadership and my background as well, because over 6 sessions, we virtually experience startups from idea phase to pivot, transformational leadership, to growth into business models, to actually authoritative leadership when a crisis hits, actually when 5 people quit, and then how to preserve a culture when you have 2 very different groups of employees, engineers and editors. And then the 6th one is about startup, sell, startup, and go to IPO, which is the story of Mercari, actually. And so by coincidence, it sort of mirrors my career and the things that I've been involved in, because I've been involved in businesses in all of those stages as well. I think that's how I came to understand or to realize that it's not just character issues, not just character traits in leadership. There's also the skill sets that you need. Now it's no good to be a toxic boss, obviously. We don't like toxic bosses. But you also need the skill sets. Great emotional intelligence is great if you know what you need to do in order to transform your company. And so that's why I think that looking at leadership from a leadership archetype, from the 5 archetypes, is very helpful. And it's also something I would bring up, that it's not linear. You don't go from one to another necessarily. You may find early that you need authoritative leadership, and then you have to go back to growth. Again, you may find that you never need to transform. There may never be a need to utilize your advocate leadership skills. And some people who are, there are many people who are always starting up new businesses, and they're sort of in semi-permanent launch leadership mode, and that's great. That's great. There are also people who are much better, myself included, not necessarily at starting something new every month, but what I call the integrating part, the integrator part, which is similar to growth leadership. So it's actually often it's a very powerful team. If two co-founders, one can be the launch leader, the other can be the growth leader or the integrator, so that you grow. You don't grow in a chaotic way, but you grow in a methodical way. That might slow down your growth a little bit, but you save a lot of energy by doing it methodically. And you save resources doing it that way as well. So part of what Synnovate does and what I do is help people, companies understand what kind of leadership skill sets do we need now, and do you have those? Shall I advise you on those? Shall I step in, or shall I introduce someone who can step in to help you with those things? And so that's how I came to, and mind you, I want to tell everyone, if you have a startup, practice your elevator pitch. And don't ever stop practicing. I still practice. And most recently, it's Synnovate helps companies evaluate, enter, grow, and succeed in the Japanese market. You don't really have 15 minutes to describe it, right? Let's ask Kaori. What do you do, Kaori?
For me, helping startup ecosystem in Japan, and also connecting to startup in Japan, and also oppositely startup in the States who want to come to Japan as a non-native English speaker / designer's perspective. This is my life mission. And also using interviewing, I can make people more shinier, like a manager to make shinier, and then making rock star. This is my pleasure.
Okay. So you heard all that. So Kaori is a typical growth leader in that way. So she's helping the founder look better and get better. We don't call them number two people. We call them integrators. Yes, integrator. Yes. Actually, I'm very similar. I'm very similar as well. I have no problem being the person behind the scenes helping somebody out front. But because of business, I've always needed to, from time to time, get out in front of everyone. And so I don't mind coming out from behind the curtains and standing in front of everyone, like a launch leader as well. But they take practice, and nobody is one single archetype of leader either. You tend towards certain things, and other skill sets are just skill sets that you might have sort of hidden away, that you need to pull out every now and again. Sort of something that you keep in your toolbox, in your wheelhouse, as they say. And so there's more work to be done on this, but I do think it's important to remember Japan is a great market. It's a great place to start a business, even for foreigners. The business manager visa can be a little bit frustrating, I understand, but it can be done. And things don't break in Japan, and you can be sure that the people at immigration are getting better at processing these, and so they'll get better at it. They're not trying to hold you down. There is no ill will at immigration. It's not a very fun place to go, but it'll get easier and easier. And as the ecosystem, thanks to Kaori and other people, gets better and better, it'll become an even more friendly place to start a business and start a company as well. So I really think not just the cheap yen, but as an ecosystem, safe, everything works, and we're about to enter the Japan decade. For the next 10 years, all the eyes are going to be on Japan for so many things. Overseas markets tend to have one sort of unicorn type of thing happening. Japan is not really a unicorn society anyway. Everybody rises together in the Japanese market, in the Japanese ecosystem as well. And so that means there are a lot of smaller, less visible innovations going on. But as I said, as my colleague pointed out on Wednesday, 1,300 new beverages last year. That's a lot. And you say, why Japan? It's because everything is poised, and we are ready to grow here in Japan. How's that?
Okay, thank you, Timothy. So, I think many audience, they want to reach out to you. So, which website or like LinkedIn is better? What do you think to reach out to you?
Oh, if you get synnovate.jp is the website, or you go to Timothy Connor on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the best place to find out more about me. If you've listened this long, you already know probably more than you want to know. But if you want to see more, go to LinkedIn. And I usually have a post a day talking about something about Japan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Timothy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.